an opening. Can you soften into it? Can you turn within? But not so much you forget that which is all around you. Sacred holy waters, active dragons and dragon lines, flickering in the night like fireflies and evensong prayers upon the wind. A confluence of currents now morphing into a dancing wheel. Vital life force, my spirit alive. Hail, spirits of heaven and earth. Now is the dawning of a new day. Turn, turning, ever turning. The wheel of time goes round and round again. But even so, life does not repeat itself exactly. Each moment is bursting anew with freshly woven patterns of light, crystalline mandalas, great glowing silkworm in the roots of the ancient tree, sparkling threads, a great prism of joy and rainbow transformation, a window into your soul and mine. We are peering now. Do not turn away. I am always watching. A great watcher inside of time and out. The wheel is my friend and ally. It can be yours too, if you learn to change with the times and change well. Just like the waters, always the same, always different. Can you feel the portal opening within? Will you let it? Will you soften now? Soften into it. Do not chase after it. Let it come to you. Always let it come to you. Just as I have come to you. Elemental forces gather, wisps of painted light, create a force field of love, a sphere of woven silk, spun by the spider of time and space. Web weaver, feel the silken spool raveling and unraveling. Outside of time, remember me as I have remembered you. Inside and outside of time is where we are one. Here the doorway opens. I cannot say you were patient, and yet here it is. Now it is here. Walk through now. Daughter, son, child, you are the silver song thread. We are here with you, all of us, forever. Hello there. I am back from my sacred travels, as you can see. It is just over a week since I have physically landed back across the Great Pond here in the US on the East Coast in the Blue Ridge. And I am settling in and settling in some more. And I feel the rising of many pieces sparks of magic, threads of color, and extraordinary co-creative expression that have been germinated, activated from my pilgrimage, from my journey. My sense is that these drops of creative and co-creative magic are going to be dropping over the next months as enchanting offerings of deep soul nourishment and fun and delight to hopefully support you and weave you in to the magical unfoldment, not just of the lands that I just walked, but of that which is arising from Gaia now. The magic is in the now. And at the heart of now is love. That is what I know, and that is what I will continue to remember over and over and over again. And that is my desire that I hope becomes the origin point from which all that blooms from within me is woven from. I want to share today the stories, some of the stories of the essences and the energies and beings of the places where I collected the essences from. As you know, on my pilgrimage, I also was collecting essences. As I was called, as I was guided, I didn't have any idea who would call me to collect their essence. It's really a co-creative moment in time when a being invites you to collect its essence. It's a very sacred, intimate exchange that I am honored and humbled by each time it unfolds. These essences want to be shared. And to give you a little insight into my process and how it works, collecting the essence, which is at the heart of obviously being able to share them with you, is really just the beginning of the journey in terms of process from end to beginning. And I said that the opposite. Beginning to end, beginning when I collect the essence, and end meaning when it can be made available for you. Sometimes essence mothers after collection have sat waiting to be shared for months because that's just how long the process has taken. And I am very clear that these essence beings, these medicines, want to go out in the world. So I asked myself and my subtle realm colleagues, what can I do in order to minimize that, to kind of minimize that process and get them to use more quickly. And the answer that came was to share a storytelling video where I'm actually sharing stories of them. If I have the understanding of the medicine, I'll share that as well. And then also offer the ability to pre-order. The way that I am introducing you to them is through these medicine stories. If one or all 6, I'm going to be introducing you to 6 essences in these medicine stories call to you, then you can place a pre-order directly with me. The first essence that I want to share about is Magog. Magog is said to be 1,000 years old, but I sense that she could be 2,000 years old. And there's some theories out there that she is. Of course, we won't know until she is complete. And Magog is an ancient oak tree that stands at what was once the entrance to the holy Isle of Avalon. Magog and the other tree, her partner, her twin, if you will, that stands to her side is Gog. And Gog has already completed. Gog has died. When I was there, I could actually still sense the spirit of Gog, not anchored in the tree, but still hovering in the periphery, in the spirit realm. It wasn't clear whether he was waiting for his friend, his beloved Magog, because they are the last of the oaks of Avalon. It is said that there used to be this row, or possibly 2 rows, almost creating an avenue that one would walk through, ushering them in, entering them in, almost like a birth canal to the holy Isle of Avalon. They were a huge part of my journey. The second day I was in Glastonbury, I became very ill, physically ill. Any plans that I had got completely shattered. And of course, I said I didn't have any plans, but when it came down to it, it turns out that I kind of did. I kind of knew what I wanted to do, and this changed everything. The only thing I could do, because Gog and Magog were actually quite close to the cottages I was staying in, the only thing I could do was to walk to them. That was it. There was one day I couldn't do anything, but on either side of that, I walked to them. This was so powerful and significant for me. Because Gog is dead, because Magog is alive, they created this portal, these two columns, like the columns of the ancient initiations. Like the columns of Boaz and Joachim. That, of course, is spoken about in the Bible as well as Masonic texts. These were the ancient columns that an initiate had to pass through. And they truly were preparing me for my death and resurrection, for this unraveling, this ego death that I was undergoing, laying down all the grief, but also letting go and surrendering who I thought I was, what I thought I needed. And for 3 days, they prepared me for my final death walk. Each day, another layer would be peeled back as I sat with them. And I could feel, even as I would return to my cottage, I could feel them with me, their presence, their energy, their force field. In no single moment did it ever occur to me that I would collect their essence. In fact, at the very beginning, the very first evening that I walked home from the well towards them before my illness took hold the following day. I walked home from the well and decided to pay them a visit. And it was then that, before then, I thought it was a possibility, but when I stood there with them, it felt very neutral in terms of essence collection. It wasn't until the third and final day, the day of my death walk, where I had let go of everything there was to let go of. And I was sitting with these trees, that I began to enter into a different quality of relationship with them. Something shifted at that moment. Then this is what's really interesting about this moment, even now. My memory between life and death is actually blurred. This is part of their medicine, I feel, is they blur the line between life and death because they help us see that they are, in some respects, the same. The portal of birth, the portal of death, it's two sides of the same coin. And because what I want to say is that I collect, in that moment where the shift in relationship came, I was called to collect Magog's essence. But I just had this tick, 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 tick. And then I wondered, wait a minute, was it then or was it the day after, as I returned to them en route to go to the tour to make my resurrection? And was it then that I was surprised by the call from Magog? I honestly have no memory And of course, I could look at the date, which was marked. But in this moment, I feel as I'm transmitting the codes of these medicines to you, that is the medicine. That is part of it. That is part of the medicine, is this blurred line. So, as you might have already gleaned, I collected the essence. I was deeply invited. There was this strong pull, and it happened like a gust of wind all of a sudden out of nowhere, because it wasn't even a figment in my mind. And then, like a gust of wind, this idea, or not even an idea, an invitation, this pull erupts between us. And I can feel Magog calling me, collect my essence, collect my essence. What was interesting is that Gog did not call me to collect his essence. And that's perfect, right? But in this case, Magog called me to collect her essence. So, Magog, and you can search her. I am going to be showing you pictures of some of the trip, which is why if you're listening to the podcast, if you have a chance to hop onto the video, you'll get those image splashes. And I feel if you're listening to the podcast, you're still going to feel the energies. In terms of Magog, I don't have any great pictures of her because they have since put this fence around her and Magog for their protection, since their death has been quickening. Gog died because of human interaction and movement. The soils were disturbed, which contributed to his death. And then on top of it, Gog was actually burnt. So, and Magog's been burnt too, but she's still alive. So there is, again, this life and death, this alchemical dance of elements. You can see the burns on both of them. So Gog, I would invite you to search Gog and Magog, the Oaks of Avalon, to see them before they were fenced off. And you cannot imagine how massive these trees are. I have not seen a massive tree, maybe the angel oak in North Carolina. I was going to say that I can think of on the East Coast of the States. These trees are massive. Their trunks are massive. Magog. The next essence that I want to share with you is the Devil's Pulpit Yew. Yew tree as in Y-E-W. This was the first essence I collected upon arrival in Wales in the Wye Valley, W-Y-E. Not clear on that pronunciation, but it's in the Wye Valley, and most people travel to the place that I travel to because of this beautiful abbey. And I actually travel there because there's a great forest and mountains surrounding the abbey and trails. And there was said to be a site called the Devil's Pulpit. And the story goes that the devil used to stand on this, what was called the pulpit, which was actually this great boulder on the side of the cliff that overlooked the entire Wye Valley, specifically the abbey. And the devil would preach and try to tempt the monks away from their work with God. And the legend goes on to say that at one point the monks hiked up the mountain and found him as he was preaching, and they resisted temptation and sprinkled holy water on him, and that was the end. They had vanquished him, and he didn't return to preach anymore. Now, I know from my work that whenever we have a site, that there are certain words that are signposts that refer to pre-Christian sacred energies, that refer to Faery, Elven, and in the case of Wales, the Twilight, which are the Welsh version of the Tua De Danann, the she. Anytime we hear the word devil being used specifically in Europe, in the British Isles, is what I've found, is there is usually a deep connection to pre-Christian sacred energies, or, as I said, fairy energies, fairy legends and people, and connection and allyship. There was something about this site that drew me. I had no idea it was that the journey that it was going to take to arrive there. Alas, probably best I did not know. It was a very hot day, 95 degrees, which is really hot for that geographic area. The whole British Isles, they don't experience that kind of heat. And this was only a 3-mile hike up and back. What I didn't realize is that the 1.5 miles to get there was actually 1,000-foot incline in a 1.5 miles, which is a lot. Oh my gosh. It was a lot. I have videos that I have little clips of just showing the struggle is real. I'm going to share some pictures of the site on top. I did finally make it, thankfully. Now, what is extraordinary about the Devil's Pulpit is I actually, upon arrival, I didn't go straight to the Devil's Pulpit. What I went to is the being who lives and grows directly across from the Devil's Pulpit. And at first, I actually thought that was the Devil's Pulpit. What it is this ancient yew. I have no idea how old this yew is, and yews are hard to date. They can't be dated because they hollow out as they get older. There is a yew growing out of this layered boulder. The combination of rock and tree, stone, which is all about holding the element of earth, but also just like the stone of destiny in the tales of the Tua De Danann, the stone of destiny, it holds our destiny in relationship to the earth. There is a mirroring in stone. Stone holds memory. The yew tree, and there is an extraordinary body of work called the Yew Mysteries that has been brought forward by a man named Michael Dunning. He is wonderful, and you should check him out. I'll link to him. But what I know from my own experience with the yews, is that they are connected to the original vision of Gaia. They are connected to the primordial waters of the Holy Mother. It's as if their physical form is only a small portion. And of course, we can say this about all living things, but there is only a small portion of what is anchored in this physical realm. They live within, they draw breath from the primordial waters of timelessness. I'm going to start showing some photos as I continue to speak. Let me arrange us. Hopefully you can see this if you're watching the video, and if you're on the podcast, then please know to just feel the energies. So I'm just showing the energy first of the walk up to this, and this is as I arrive, and you can see how massive this yew tree is. This is the yew tree that was on the rock that I at first thought was the devil's pulpit. And then I walked down. And as I showed my dear friend Rosemary yesterday, she said, that's a being. The whole thing is a being. It's its own consciousness. And you can see my essence glass is there, and the essence is being collected. So let me share with you the codes of what this essence holds as I show these pictures. Extraordinary. As you know, with all legends and tales, there is some thread of truth. Of course, this is not the devil, but we can think of those sacred energies, the deep, holy energies, the living energies of Gaia, the holy elemental forces of creation, the forces of Faery. And of course, we know that the devil would stand on the pulpit and speak and transmit, right? It was a transmission. And so we've replaced devil with sacred energies of Gaia. So imagine this is a place of holy transmission of the sacred energies and truth of Gaia. A place of oracular flowing currents, where oracular wisdom can be connected into and transmitted to share ancient wisdom, truth, love. This is the medicine of the devil's pulpit yew that I collected. It is a medicine to connect us with our inner oracle, to connect us with our oracular gifts, which is about channeling not other beings' voices, but channeling the deep, ancient, future wisdom that moves through the currents of the earth. It is the living dream of the earth flowing through you in clarity, in love. And what this essence actually supports deeply is healing any distortions around using these gifts. Particularly what I saw when I was collecting this was I was shown and reminded of the time when oracles were co-opted. We see it in the Greek myth of the desecration of Delphi and the co-opting of Delphi. The oracles of Delphi, if you look up a lot of the texts, will call them oracles of Apollo. Those are later texts. These oracles were once the oracles of Gaia. The living energy of Delphi was a great python serpent. This was the embodied expression of Gaia, the Earth Mother. And the story goes, of course, the oracle of Delphi and all the priestesses would channel, would bring forward the wisdom, the words, the truth of Gaia, until Apollo came and slayed the python and subjugated the priestesses and made them become priestesses, oracles of Apollo. This is just one example in history, but I've also been shown that throughout time, and this happened with the Sibyls, throughout time, there have been oracles, prophetesses that have been co-opted during the transition from pre-Christian, earth-based spirituality to, we're going to say, Roman, the Holy Roman Empire, because early Christian peoples actually blended beautifully. And the Celtic Christianity is an example of that. They blended beautifully with the earth-based spirituality. The Sibyls and other oracles, other channels of the ancient world were co-opted by the church. The Inquisition and such, that persecution that came later, originally they were co-opted, they were taken in, and they were made to prophesy and transmit for the church. So that which came forward from them was either twisted or distorted or plagiarized in an ancient sense, used in a way that was not given credit and honor to the source from which it flowed, suggesting instead that it came from the mouths and minds and wisdom of the priests. When we have this trauma, this memory in our either ancestral line or our being from past life experience, we can want to hold back our gifts. We can want to not share our gifts because we're afraid they will be either misused, misappropriated, or distorted in some way. So we can hold back. We can hold back out of fear also of what might happen if we share our gifts. And perhaps we were on the other side of this as well. Perhaps we were those who perhaps misappropriated others' gifts. We don't know. We've all played on both sides of history, even in our own lives, in this lifetime. This essence helps to go to the core of that, to help you remember what it is to transmit as a living oracle of truth, of Gaia. It helps you remember the deep love that one must feel in one's heart as the living stream of Gaia's wisdom comes through you. It is truly a merging of lovers. It is a union and a reunion of lovers. It is holy and sacred and ecstatic. It is delightful and filled with joy. It is not the energy of burden or the energy of creating followers. It is allowing expression, allowing life to move through you. This is the medicine at the deepest level. It invites all of us into our own living oracular connection and wisdom. I'm just showing some of the other images. This is the other side of that same. Here's the essence collection, and the Yew would have me move the collection jar in different places, and a lot of places it was actually catching this stream of light here. You can see there's this little magical light starting to form here. What is that? Is that a being? There's these light codes I was able to capture coming through. And there's the Yew from the different sides. If you're on the podcast, I'm showing different angles. And lastly, I want to finish. This is actually indeed the Devil's Pulpit. And here's where they suggested that he would stand here or here. And you can see this is the Wye Valley, and there is the Abbey. And I think, yeah. The Devil's Pulpit Yew. If that is one of the essences you want, just say Devil's Pulpit, because there is another essence that was collected in a circle of yews, and I don't want you to confuse them. I want to make sure you get which one that you are really called to, and maybe it's both. Okay, so the next essence we're going to talk about is the Dragons of Albion. Now, if you watched my video sharing about my heartbreak around old pathways closing, and one of those pathways was Merlin's Cave. Merlin's Cave is a very special place to me. It exists in Tintagel in Cornwall, which is the coast, the western coast of England. And this part of the country is characterized by these great sea cliffs with this crashing wild sea below, and just striking, absolutely striking topography. Visually, one wants to just, for me, there's this moment standing upon those sea cliffs where we begin to feel overcome with the majesty, overcome with the energy of place. Absolutely overcome. And in that moment, for me, this awestruck wonder cracks within me. And at some moment, if I can climb from the edge of that cracking open, there even comes this point in time that I will admit that the landscape, that which I am seeing and beholding, is so impossibly beautiful that I seek to almost want to possess it. I want to race up and down the cliffs and try to get in and capture every view that I can with my eyes and soak it up and really take it in. It's like I want it inside of me, which sounds quite erotic and sexual in nature, to want to pull the energies that are out there deep inside. And that's how these cliffs, they are so visually awe-inspiring for me. Merlin's cave is on the beach, nestled in between one of these cliff coves. And there's a great deal of legend and lore connected to it. I'll link to my Cornwall virtual shamanic journey and book tour that I did, where I talk about a lot of the legend and mythology connected to Tintagel, and specifically King Arthur's conception, birth, and how Merlin fits in loosely. This cave I had planned on returning to. It's a touch point for me. When the stairs to go down to the beach, and these are not just a small flight of stairs, you're going down a sea cliff. So imagine that. You can't just climb down if the stairs are broken. The stairs were broken in a storm, all of them. They had buckled and they're destroyed, and they were being repaired, but they had not finished repair yet. And so it was closed off. So this was heartbreaking for me, not only because I had anticipated this touch point, but because I had anticipated collecting. That was the one essence I thought I would collect, which was Merlin's cave, Merlin in Merlin's cave. And that was because I had, for those of you who know, Merlin's dragon essence that I collected in Merlin's cave when I was leading a pilgrimage in 2018. And that essence is almost gone. There's probably about maybe 35 stock bottles that can be made left of it. Not very much. So I couldn't get there. And that in and of itself was its own journey. And I shared that in a video, which I'll link to. I'm making notes on what to link to. When I let go of that fully, a new pathway opened up. And it happened one night when I was walking along the coastal pathway during sunset. Now, this was in the summer, and sunset was literally at around 10 o'clock at night. And I had made this practice. I was there for 5 nights and made this nightly practice of walking the sea cliffs at night. And each night I'd walk in a different direction, and I came to have my favorite spots that I would perch upon and gaze out at the setting sun and the sea cliffs and the raging sea below. And one day I took a different route, and it allowed me to see Merlin's cave, of course, from the cliff above, not down in it. And in that moment, not only did I have this laser focused connection with the cave itself, but I saw the cave in a new light, because it was high tide, which I had never experienced high tide, the cave at high tide, and certainly not from that vantage point. And the cave was flooded. I knew this happened mentally, but I'd never visually seen it. And suddenly I just had this rush of emotion, and it was this new old energy. It was the old and the new meeting, and they were having a dance. It was during that time that I was given instruction that the following evening I was being invited to come out to the sea cliffs at night, well, at the setting sun, to collect an essence. This essence is essentially Merlin's Dragon Essence 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever. It's a completely different energy, and yet it's an evolution. There is a connection. Where I was sitting collecting the essence, if you can imagine this moment, and I'm going to begin to show images again. If you can imagine this moment where the sea is rushing into the cave that I can see, and the sun is setting in the west. The west, which was always connected with Atlantis and the Holy Isles that would disappear, the Faery Islands. And there were multitudes of dragons of sea and land and air flying overhead. Not flying in one direction or other, but back and forth as if weaving, stitching some pattern that only they knew and understood, a pattern of that moment in time. This is a medicine of liminality. It is an edge medicine. This is a medicine of elemental power and creation. Dragons are creator beings. There are dragons at the beginnings and endings of all stories, all living myths. There was layer upon layer of living liminal symbol, the time of the setting sun, the horizon, the cave that was now flooded with water, which was both old and new. This medicine is about reconfiguring. It supports an internal configuring from inside out. The dragon's flight patterns are mirroring in that moment the pulse, the rhythm, the heartbeat of the earth. And they ask, what is being released? Oftentimes we release and then we scramble to figure out what life or what does our internal structure want to be after something has gone away, right? There's space that's been created. And this supports a reordering of our internal structure after a release, after a completion, after a transition. So think about any transition you're going through in life. How does your internal structures and world want to be reordered in order to support you as you step onto the new pathway for this next level of expression that you're entering into? This medicine is a beautiful balance of land, sea, and sky, above, below, and middle. Elemental balance of earth, air, water, and fire. So I'm just going to return to some of the images here just to give, these are images of the setting sun at different times. And then there's one more set of images, if I can find them. And if, this was when the essence was actually collected. This is towards the end of the collection. And what I'm showing those who are on video is this, if you can see, the clouds are starting to take on the shape of dragons here. We can see this one right here in the far right. Even its legs and everything coming down, its tail is curled here. And there's the essence collection. Here we go is another image of the dragons forming. Here's another one. This looks like the dragon, a dragon mouth arising from this great cloud. Here's one. And even this. So these are just, do I feel that the clouds are dragons? Not necessarily. I feel that the environment is taking on the form of these energy expressions, these rising energetic expressions. And that this is the dragon's way of manifesting in matter. The other three essences are an ancient circle of yews. These yew trees are probably 2,000 years old each. There was a church that's almost 1,000 years old that was built in the center of them. But they are certainly a circle of yew trees that was either connected to the Druids or to pre-Christian holy people. These trees are a cocoon of golden light that held me to know that I was love. The penultimate essence that was collected was a golden dragon rising in celebration from the top of the highest waterfall in all of Britain, called Pistol Raider in the Berwyn Mountains. This is a place in North Wales, and all of creation was singing to me. This was a moment of celebration and exaltation. This was a celebration of life, an explosion of beauty, celebrated beauty, ecstatic love for life. And the final essence that was collected was Gwyn ap Nudd, Faery, or Elven king of the Twilight, of the Wild Hunt, at Castell Dinas Bran, Castle of Crows. There's so much to this essence, but at its heart, this is the medicine. This is his love for humanity. And to journey with this essence is to journey with creation's love for you, God's love for you, life's love for you, the fairy people's love for you, Gwyn's love for you. It is an essence of cracking open in the most soul shaking but heart tending way. There is an etheric quality to this essence that helps us touch in to the love of the other world, helps us move beyond mind to allow a permeation of soul and self from the inside out with pure love from the other world. It's profound. Because I do feel like I was able to bring all of those energies through. And although you don't have the full stories for the last three, I feel that you will be able to feel them and know if you are called to them. To pre-order, during the time of pre-order, they are going to be $18 each. Shipping will be free. Please just Venmo, PayPal friends and family, or Cashapp me that amount with in the payment note, making sure you name the essences you want. And then please follow up with an email, connect@DiomiraRose.com. So there's 2 steps there, the payment and making sure you write which essences you want. And if you forgot to write which essences you want, please write those in the email that you send with your mailing address. I need both of those pieces in order to be able to send these essences. And as my thank you to you for allowing me to share these easily, as I said, they're going to be only $18 for this pre-order introductory period, and the shipping is free. I am asking you to please get all of these pre-orders in by Friday, August 26th. I will not be taking any pre-orders after Friday, August 26th. And then all pre-orders will be shipped by Tuesday, August 30th. That doesn't necessarily mean that they will arrive by then, but they will be shipped by then. If you live outside of the United States and you are interested in these essences, please contact me at connect@DiomiraRose.com. You can still absolutely order them. There will be a shipping charge, and we'll have to determine what that is. I also want to announce for you to keep your eyes and ears open and peeled that we are going to be I'm teaching a class. I am really excited. The details will come, but basically this is Elemental Alchemy 101, basic essence potion formulation for your own personal healing. What I mean by this is not a practitioner. I'm not teaching you how to be a practitioner or formulate for clients or other people. This is really how to formulate potions, essence potions for yourself. And I got really inspired on my trip to do this. I want to make elemental whispers really approachable for all of you. I feel that where Elemental Whispers shines is in our fairy kings and queens and magical spaces and places essences. These are unique and extraordinary medicines that my years of relationship building and experience with the other world allows me to collect and bring and share with you. And I really want to dissolve any difficulty or confusion around how to work with these essences. I'm going to teach you how I formulate, how I work with the fairy kings and queens and add them actually to formulas, how they change when they're in relationship with other essences. I'm going to show you really easy ways to use these. And why would you want to formulate for yourself versus just taking drops out of the bottle? Well, for one, it's actually a lot more financially economical because you're only using a small amount of the stock bottle that you buy to make your formula bottle. And then the formula bottle is what you actually take until you want to change formulas. And so it's actually really economical, and it's actually really easeful. It's so much more easeful to take 3 drops 3 times a day of one formula versus drop 3 drops 3 times a day of all these different, 8 essences that you're working with, or 3 essences that you're working with, or whatever you're working with. You just take this one formula. So it makes it really easeful, really joyful. It also, to me, brings out the best of the essences. They work together, and it really creates an extraordinary experience to journey you. This has been cooking for a while, and it really popped open in full bubbling delight while I was on my trip. So I really want to support you in this. And I'm going to be teaching this class this month. I do not have the dates in front of me at this moment. I will. Hopefully they will be either in the YouTube description by the time this is released, the podcast description by the time this is released, or in the email that you receive this in. So stay tuned for that. It is going to be so fun. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what else unfolds. Please let me know if you have any questions. And I hope you enjoyed this essence storytelling session.